welcome everyone to our Blue Soul Summit. And we are here with Swami Saradananda. Did I get that correct?
Perfect.
Beautiful. And we are so happy to have you here today with us to talk about your work and your books and anything else that you would like to chat about. But before we get started, I would like to give the viewers just a short overview of your background because it's pretty impressive and really drew us to your work. You're an internationally renowned yoga and meditation teacher who has inspired thousands of people to practice and has been teaching for over 40 years. You're the author of 7 books, including Sitting Comfortably, which is your latest one, The Power of Breath and Mudras for Modern Life, as well as others. You've worked at the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta centers for 26 years and directed centers in New York, Toronto, London, New Delhi, and the Himalayas. And that's exciting for us because, we run a travel magazine and have been to all of those places and include some of at least my favorite cities. You are also the author in residence at the Peacemaker Community in Western Massachusetts, and I lived there for 10 years, by the way, and the Yoga and Meditation Retreat House Yoga Vidya in Germany. And we'll talk about your latest book today, Sitting Comfortably, as well as other books, but the latest book is a guide to setting up a healthy meditation practice with ease. So we'd love to hear more about that. And you can also speak to us about the Hospice Center as well in Northern India, which I know you are a trustee of.
Right.
So
I also have a master's degree in yoga and traditions of yoga and meditation from SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London.
Beautiful. Let's definitely add that. I lived in Africa twice, so I'm a huge fan of the continent, and every time I go there, I just feel at home. So with that, let's get started. The first question that I had, and I'm sure many of the viewers are thinking the same thing, is what inspired you at an early age to move into this life dedicated to yoga and also of service?
Well, I think I started doing yoga the way most people start, is I was looking for some kind of physical exercise to do. And I saw an advert in the newspaper, and I had no idea what it was, but I thought I'd try. So I started doing the asanas, the physical exercise, and then I found out about the philosophy, the meditation, and I just kept getting more and more into it. And I think I've always been interested in philosophy. And even when I was at college, theoretically I was majoring in psychology, but I used to take philosophy courses all the time. But they never really answered things for me until I started hearing about yoga philosophy. And it just seemed like what I've been looking for a long time. And it just made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because both Anthony and I have a deep interest in philosophy and, took a lot of philosophy courses in college too. And it can definitely take you down the rabbit hole.
How old were you when you decided to start doing yoga?
I was 21.
You knew the yoga asana practice. Did you decide to become a teacher as well, doing the asana practice? Or are you more interested into the philosophy and the breath work of it all?
Well, no, I was mainly interested in the asanas.
Yes.
And I did a teacher's training with the Sivananda organization in the Bahamas.
Right. Okay.
And then I started, I just thought I wanted to do it more, get more into it. So then I started working with them. And in working with them, I got more and more interested in the philosophy.
Okay. Were you able to bring in some of your psychology, some of the work that you did there as well, into the practice and into the philosophy?
Yeah, no, I don't think I was.
Yeah.
Because when I took psychology, all I learned really was that if you design your study properly, you can prove anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I found when I studied psychology, it didn't really talk about the mind, which is what I was interested in.
Right.
Maybe I was going to the wrong program,
Mhm.
the wrong school. But when I started studying yoga, and I found that the psychological part of it would help me more, because if you read the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, it's really a study of the mind.
When you began studying and doing your teacher training, was there a mentor that you had that really inspired you, that leapfrogged you to the next level?
Yeah, well, my teacher was the head of the Sivananda organization. His name was Swami Devananda. And I lived and studied with him for about 20 years.
Were there any countries when you were traveling that really inspired you as well?
Well, the Sivananda organization is an international organization. So I worked at different places, I visited different places. I'm from New York originally. Maybe you can hear my accent.
Yes,
Um,
we're from New York
We're
too.
both from New York as well.
uh-huh. Yeah, but I've been living in London now for about 30 years, but I haven't lost my accent yet. So I travel to different places working with the Shivananda organization, but I always wanted to go to India. And I don't know why, even as a child, I had this thing about India. And maybe, some people say, oh, it's from a past life, or maybe, I don't know. Um, but I know when I first got to India, I really felt like I was coming home. And it's interesting because the first time I went to India was in 1977, and I actually drove there from Germany with a few other people. And when we got to the border, I was actually driving. And you know how you roll down the window and the immigration people sort of start talking to you? It was this big Sikh guard. The Sikhs, they had like these big turbans and big
Yeah,
beard, and I had never seen anyone like this before, and I was quite sort of not shocked, but
Taken aback.
taken aback.
taken back, yes. And he sort of stuck his head in the car and gave me sweets and said, "Welcome home." And
Wow.
afterwards, I thought about it, and I don't know why, because immigration officials don't usually do that. Maybe, his wife had a baby or, something. But that's the first words that anyone said to me when I got to India was, "Welcome home." So as soon as I got there, I really felt at home. And even now, many years later, I feel it's my spiritual home. And that's one of the difficult parts of being in lockdown was for the past 3 years, I haven't been able to go to India.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to going again.
So, one of the things that you're really known for is making it easy to meditate and even pleasurable,
Mhm.
right? You say, what is your secret or your trick or your process, if you like, maybe not trick, but what is your process that you bring people through to make it easier?
Well, I've noticed that a lot of people who want to meditate or they think they want to meditate, but then they don't actually do it, it's because it's just not comfortable. You see, so even though we want to do something, if it's not pleasant, we're going to put it off. So I help people to be able to sit comfortably, and that's where the title of the book came from. It actually came from a verse in the Yoga Sutra, which says, when you sit for meditation, your pose should be comfortable and steady.
Mm.
See, I wanted to call the book Prepare to Meditate. The publisher didn't like that too much. So we called it Sitting Comfortably. And it really, you want to feel comfortable when you do something. I mean, it's not that it has to be super luxurious, but at least there has to be some basic comfort. Um, so physical comfort, how to bring your body into a condition where it's comfortable to sit, and also with the mind, the breath, and even things that a lot of people don't think about is diet.
Mm.
Because people don't think about how much the effect what how much effect the diet has on the mind. So like if
Everything's
you
connected. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Garbage in, garbage out. It's so funny. In some of the courses that we teach, we have a favorite thing that we say is, if you eat from a box, you become a box.
um,
Yeah. It's so true though, right? I mean, it's the mind body, right? Our energy body affects our physical body and vice versa.
Mhm.
people want to meditate, but they say their minds are so jumpy. And then you ask them, well, how many cups of coffee do you drink in a day? And they say 10 cups, and they don't put it together. That if you're drinking 10 cups of coffee a day, obviously your mind is going to be really jumpy. So if you want to make your mind more peaceful, maybe you can reduce the coffee.
And sugar, right? Obviously, sugar, processed foods, anything that's really not going to align your system, right? You always want to eat more, as organic and close to the earth as possible.
Where does exercise come into your meditation practice as well? How does that become part of your meditation?
Well, it's not actually part of the meditation, but it helps to prepare you for the meditation.
Mhm.
You see, like if your knees hurt, if your back hurts, you're going to have a lot of trouble sitting comfortably
Right.
because your mind is going to be on the pain. So if you can bring your body to a state where it's flexible enough, then you're going to be able to sit comfortably. So that's what the asanas do, is
Right.
they bring your body to a state of comfort.
Mhm.
Um,
And helps with the flexibility as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, the flexibility enables you to sit comfortably.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we just don't realize how inflexible most of us are. I mean, we're naturally not like that as children. But then as we move forward in life and we're sitting at a desk all day and, we just don't get out, we don't move, right? You've got to move that stagnant stuff through the system.
Yeah, because even if you do asanas, do the physical exercises of yoga, then most people, they go to work and they sit like this, with the hands on the computer and the shoulders rounded for like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So you have to do something to counteract that if you want to sit comfortably.
So part of the process that you bring people through is posture, how to sit, diet, breath work, and what about in terms of shutting the mind down so that you can sit longer comfortably?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so if the mind starts to become peaceful, if it develops the habit of staying on a point rather than jumping around, so you give your mind something to focus on. And I always start people with the breath because everyone's got one, obviously. They know where it is. It's like really simple. Um, but then I think at some point, if you really want to get into meditation, you've got to let go of your physical body or let go of the awareness of your physical body. Um, so the problem is the breath is in the physical body. So I think as you progress, it's good to start working with a mantra because, sound helps to focus the mind. So, a mantra is a positive energy, a sound that you can focus on. I know a lot of people, they think a mantra means sort of like a mission statement or a practice intention. But that's not what a mantra is. A mantra is a sound that where you focus on the sound itself rather than the meaning. And I think that's like the difference, the big difference between maybe um, a song or a prayer and a mantra, because in a prayer you focus on the meaning of the words, whereas a mantra you focus on the sound itself.
Well, every sound has a frequency and a resonance and a vibration that affects our bodies. I certainly, we love Diva Pramal, and we love listening to her mantras for sure.
Mhm.
There is something magical about Sanskrit, So, yeah, what can you tell us about what you've learned about Sanskrit and why it's so magical for you?
Sanskrit is an energetic language, whereas English is a meaning-based language. Like most Western languages, we focus on the meaning. And because of that, I think it's quite difficult for a lot of Westerners to understand the concept of mantra or of Sanskrit, because in Sanskrit, it's the exact sound that's important.
How are some of the sounds in Sanskrit? How are they different than in English themselves? When you call it an energetic language, what makes it different?
It's the sound is important. You see, we think the meaning of the word is important, whereas in Sanskrit, it's the sound itself, the actual vibration.
Right. Sanskrit seems to have a lot of these and ing and these nasal sounds that create some type of vibration within the nasal cavity, and it's very I don't know how to say it,
Healing.
but it's a vibration that occurs within your brain and within your head itself, that English doesn't have all of these sounds in that manner. So there's something there. I do remember chanting a lot in Sanskrit, in the mantras themselves, when I did a lot of yoga as well, and when I was doing my meditations. I would always listen to them, and little by little, I would start to chant as well.
And it's also the repetition, right? I mean,
yeah, the repetition of
the vibration of those sounds.
Yeah, well, Sanskrit, the alphabet has 50 letters in it, whereas English, we only have 26. So they have a lot of sounds that we don't have. And I think that's one reason why it's difficult for a lot of Westerners to sort of get Sanskrit, because like you might think, and it's also very, it's completely anatomical according to the shape of your mouth. You see, so there's it starts in the back of your throat, k, and the alphabet works forward. Whereas in English, there's no reason. Why is B after A? We just say A, B, C, but there's no reason for it. Right? Whereas in Sanskrit, the language is completely according to the anatomy of the alphabet is completely according to the anatomy of your mouth and throat.
So it starts from the glottis and works its way up to the
lips.
Right. So it goes from the back to the front.
Yeah.
Are all the words produced from back sounds to front word to the front?
No, just the alphabet.
Just the alphabet itself.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Absolutely
fascinating.
Yeah. And how you place your mouth and how you place your tongue. You see, so there's a difference between ka, where you have your tongue going up, and ta, where your tongue is touching your teeth.
Right.
And I think as Westerners, it's difficult for us to hear it at first. But I think as your ear gets used to it, you can hear it more.
And also, like you said, there's a resonance. And I think even if you don't understand it, there's not anyone that we've talked to, right? Or even that we've experienced directly. When you're chanting in Sanskrit, something changes and shifts in your body. It's like bringing you back to the breath again. It's bringing you into that theta brainwave state where we can connect, right, to whatever that higher source is for you.
But if you think about it, how do children learn to speak a language? They don't learn the meaning, but they learn the sounds. And from the sound, they start to understand what it means.
That's correct. Yes.
Mhm.
Right. I'm by profession a speech and language pathologist.
Hence the additional interest here, their deep interest in language.
I love phonology and everything linguistic, sound, the spectrums of sounds and things like that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful language, right?
So I think you're right. Whatever, you don't need to necessarily know the meaning when you're meditating, but you're focusing on the sound itself. And when you're focusing on that sound, those sound waves kind of just take you away. It takes you to another place.
To
takes
another
you out
dimension.
of your, literally takes you out of your body per se. And that's some of the higher levels, I believe, of the meditation practice. Yeah.
How do you see or describe those dimensions, right, that we get brought into through meditation, yoga, chants, right? We go into these, Cynthia Bourgeois calls it these subtler dimensions, and every culture has a different name for it. How do you see them or describe them to people?
I just see it as getting more and more into focusing the mind until you experience only oneness. If the infinite exists, I mean, maybe you remember this from school. What would happen if you took infinity and you cut it in half?
You might have a parallel universe, perhaps.
So really the infinite exists, and the illusion is that there's separation.
Right.
So I see tuning to a mantra is like an aid to help you to really focus on just that oneness, or you could say the infinite, to be one with understand or experience. It's an experience of absolute peace.
And that's what the yoga practice helps you do through the breath work, through the meditations, into your daily life. You just feel this peacefulness.
Yeah, so you feel it in your meditation, this feeling of absolute peace, and then that sort of carries over when you come back to normal consciousness.
Right.
There's a residue effect. That's how we often describe it, as that there's this residue that lingers on, and it keeps you in this vibration of love, really. So do you want to talk to people about your latest book, Sitting Comfortably?
Yeah, I have a copy here.
Beautiful. We haven't gotten a copy in yet, but we're excited to read it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll get it in.
Yeah. So I've been teaching a course for about maybe 15 years now. And I just call it Teach Meditation. And it's a course for yoga teachers who want to teach meditation. Beyond the physical aspect of yoga, because most yoga teachers teach mainly the asanas. Some teach the pranayama as well. So I've been teaching, it's a 3-month course where, we meet and then people have homework to go home and practice, because you can't teach I think a good teacher is someone who teaches from her own experience. So it's all, whenever I teach, I always keep extensive notes, the kind of questions that people ask, and then I know what to put into the course. So this book is about, it's derived from that course. You see, so what are the questions or problems that people have when they try to meditate? And I'm afraid the publisher, they made it look like a yoga book, and I wanted it to be sort of for anyone who wants to meditate in any tradition. Because now people do so many different types of meditation. But I think preparing for the meditation is the same. And also it looks a little too girly.
So So in other words, if you're listening to this and you are male orientation, this is for you as well. So we're both very interested in the chakras, and we do a lot with chakras, mainly with, I love, playing crystal bowls and, doing the different crystal bowls for each of the chakras. And you've written about the chakras as well. So, do you want to speak about that relative to the auric field or the energy body, or however you refer to it as?
So I speak about it as being part of the astral body. In yoga, we say there's a physical body, the astral body, and the causal body, which is where your karma is. So, but in the astral body when I tell students about this, I say it's everything you have, but you couldn't point to. You have a mind, but this is your brain, which is in the physical body. It's not your mind, right? Or you have emotions, but the emotions, you can't point to them. You can say, I have a lot of love in my heart, and everyone always goes like this when they say it, but no doctor will ever find it there. You see, because love is not a physical thing. It might have a physical effect on the body, love or anger, your muscles get very tense, your face gets red, but the anger itself is not a physical thing. So all of that we say is in the astral body. And also in the astral body are what we call nadis.
Mm-hmm.
In yoga, we talk about nadis, whereas if you go for acupuncture, the acupuncturist talks to you about your qi, he studied the Chinese system of acupuncture, like Tai Chi or Qigong. They work with prana, because qi is a Chinese word for prana. Or if you go to an acupuncturist who talks about ki, he studied the Japanese system,
right?
Like Kido, right? Works with prana. So it's a non-physical energy that moves through the physical body, through the meridians that yogis call nadis. And there are points where many nadis come together. I always talk about it as being like, there are a lot of roads in the country, and the traffic is moving along the roads. But if you think about it, where do you get traffic jams? Is at the junctions where roads come together.
The intersections and the roundabouts.
Right. Yeah. So if you have maybe acupuncture points where two small meridians come together, but where the major meridians come together, where a lot of nadis come together, we would call chakras. Right? And the word chakra literally means wheel, but I think wheel, in a way, it's not like a good translation, because we always think of a wheel. Well, a wheel is two-dimensional. It moves like this, up and down, forward and back, or else like this. You see, so I've had like students ask me, well, quite frequently, they ask, do you think the chakras rotate vertically or horizontally?
Yeah.
And I always say, yes.
Yeah.
Because I don't think of them as being moving in two dimensions, but I think it would be better to think of them as balls of energy.
Or discs. Sometimes you hear them referred to as discs as well.
A disc is still moves two-dimensionally. So I think that's actually a bad translation. I mean, I know people say it, and it would be it's a literal translation, but it doesn't give you the understanding of what I think they really are, which would be in multi-dimensional balls of energy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's part of the challenge for us as human beings. We think in linear terms, and that's how we've been conditioned and trained, right, through our traditional academic institutions. And so we think of things in polarities, left, right, up, down, big, small. And so to even try to explain it in a way, we have that challenge as well, and we use the word multidimensionality, but even that is hard for people to get their heads around.
Right, right. Yeah, because we live in 3 dimensions. So where are those other dimensions? But I mean, even physicists, they talk about, Stephen Hawking said 10 dimensions exist. So obviously there's more than 3. Or I think Kabbalah says, or I think 12 in Kabbalah.
That sounds right.
Whereas some physicists say there are infinite number of dimensions.
Right.
Right. So we don't really know how many there are, but still it's hard for us to understand what are these dimensions? Where are they?
Yeah. Because we sort of think about them as, and you also hear people say, well, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th dimension, but then that's back to linear thinking again. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just a way for us human beings to compartmentalize things and make sense of it.
In your book, because there are a lot of people that do want to meditate, but they find it so difficult because sometimes, especially in the United States and perhaps in England and other European countries, people are on the go a lot. They're always moving. So when it comes time to just stop moving and to sit, what would you recommend to a person who has difficulty just stopping and sitting? How would you prepare that individual to just sit?
Especially for the type A personalities among us.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I think people think they're just sitting doing nothing.
Right.
They have trouble sitting and doing nothing. But I always say, but you're not doing nothing. You're actually doing something that's so difficult that, you're trying to find excuses not to do it. So if you think about it, when are you happy? I mean, what's the goal of life, really? Is to be happy. I mean, it's the one thing in life that everyone wants, and you can't say why. You just do. But think about the times when you're happy. It's when your mind is focused. You see, we make the mistake of thinking I'm happy because I got the thing that made me happy for that period.
Or did the thing, did something or bought something.
Yeah, you see, it's like we mistake the trigger for the experience. You see, so like say you eat an ice cream, right? And for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, you totally focus on the ice cream and you feel happy. You don't want anything else. You feel peaceful, right?
I can definitely confirm that. I've never not been unhappy eating an ice cream.
Yeah. So then you think ice cream makes me happy. But actually, ice cream is only the trigger to make you focus. You see? Or like people who play golf. If you play golf, you've got to really focus because it's quite difficult to get that little ball in that hole that's, way over there. But they think playing golf or getting a hole in one makes them happy. But actually, it's because they're focused. So whenever you focus, whenever your mind is focused, you feel happy.
Or in the present moment as well.
Yeah, because if you're focused, you're in the present moment. See? Normally, we're thinking about the future or we're worrying about something we did in the past. But if you can be focused in the present moment, you feel really peaceful and happy. So I think it's coming to that understanding and thinking, well, what is there that I think will make me happy? Sometimes I actually, as an exercise, I have people write a list of what will make me happy and then think about it. Whatever you wrote down, think about, okay, in a year, does it still make you happy? You see, and really, as long as you think that some thing, some object, meaning something outside of yourself, will make you happy, you're never really going to be happy, or not for long. You see, like if you think, if I just met the right person, I'd be happy. But then that person changes, you change. You have to constantly adapt. So that person isn't making you happy, right? I mean, they do for a while, but then you want something else. So if you understand that it's the focus that makes you happy rather than the thing that gives you the focus.
Right. And that can be an activity too, because, there's people, for example, as they get older and say they lose the ability to do something that they always used to, whether it's basketball or, playing a more intense physical activity. And then as men get older and can't do that, they feel like they've lost something, lost some of that inner joy. You see that with all sorts of activities.
Yeah, but any activity, if you're really good at it, you're really focused. And you feel really happy when you are focusing, when you're doing that. So I always explain meditation as being like everyone has something that they like to do. Like some people like to garden, and they get out in their garden, and they just, if the sun didn't go down, they would just keep focused, gardening all day. Or you hear about painters, these famous painters that painted nonstop for 3 days. Their minds were totally focused, and at that time, they felt really happy.
They're in what we call the zone, right? They're in the zone, or, some people call that being in another dimension.
Yeah, so I would say that's what meditation is. But the difference is that, or maybe that's like a low level meditation, because you still need something outside of yourself to focus on. Whereas if you could just focus, like just sit quietly and focus your mind, you would feel really peaceful and happy. And I think that's what you want out of life, really. I mean, people don't realize it, but I think that's what everyone wants out of life.
Yeah, I mean, I love when you say, focus, but also combining that with being in the present moment, because, one of the things that I have observed and I have lived in London, I've lived all over the world, and I found that like the further west I moved, the less present people were. And I know that's kind of a blanket, stereotypical statement, but I would measure it based on going out for coffee with someone or lunch with someone. Are they looking me in the eye? Are they present with the person that they're with? Or are they looking all over the place? Or are they, glancing at their phone? Or are they elsewhere? Or are they looking, directly across the table at you when you're with them? And, that's often been a measure for me. How connected does someone choose to be with the person that they're with when they're with them? Is there any other book that you would like to talk about or share with people?
Well, since we were talking about the chakras, I actually have 2 books that I've written. One is called Chakra Meditation, and the other, which looks completely different, is called The Essential Guide to Chakras. And people always think that it's a repackaging, but it's not. This is obviously about meditation, and this is more practical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When you say practical, you mean what each chakra stands for in terms of energy and how to get it aligned in your life and how that will show up.
Yeah, how working with the chakras can help you in everyday life. And this is my mudra book.
Anthony's favorite. He loves his mudras.
And this is my pranayama book, The Power of Breath.
Powerful. Yeah.
And I think if you're going to work with chakras, it's when I I wrote the chakra book first, the Chakra Meditation, and then Watkins Publishing asked me to do a book on pranayama. And when I was working on it, I realized it's actually a prequel. If you want to work with the chakras, I would really suggest that you start working with the breath first.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, breath is everything, everything, you know?
And if you want to work with the breath, I have another book that's a prequel to that, which is called The Cleansing Power of Yoga. And this actually works, it talks about kriyas, yoga cleansing exercises, which I think aren't so well known by a lot of people. But I think now, everyone's worried about, what's in the air. They're really cleansing exercises, and it's doing things like neti, which is the nasal cleansing. Like if you're worried about breathing in viruses, maybe if you breathe them in, but then you clean it out before it actually gets into the lungs. So I think neti, the nasal cleansing, is something everyone should be doing now. Whenever you go out in public, and then you come back, you can do neti. It was developed so that you could do pranayama more easily. If your nose is blocked, you're not going to be able to do pranayama.
So true. So that'll help with people who aren't just worried about COVID or, environmental pollutants, but also people who have allergies, which is a lot of people,
Yeah, I wrote the book long before COVID. I actually wrote the Sitting Comfortably during lockdown. I signed the contract to write the book about 2 weeks before the lockdown began. And then everyone's complaining about being locked down. And I just thought, it's the way I always live when I write a book. I sit and I focus on writing, and I go out a couple times a week and get some food and bring it back and go back to writing. So I think the lockdown, in a way, was quite positive for me. It was a positive thing.
Well, and also for that particular book, right? It was actually something that people needed, even if they didn't think they needed it. It couldn't have been, more perfect timing for that book, for sure. So I am curious about that last book that you just brought up of the cleansing things. What's another example other than the sinus? What would another example be of a cleanse that you could do?
Things like oil pulling. I don't know if that's popular there, but it's very, well, about a year or two ago, it was very popular in London, where you just take oil and you put it in your mouth and you swish it around. And I do it every morning, and for about 20 minutes. And when I say 20 minutes, everyone looks at me in horror, like I don't have 20 minutes. But you can put it in your mouth and then go about, I put in my mouth, and while I'm getting dressed and making my bed and, getting breakfast ready, and you can be doing other things while you do it. And I think it's really good because so many people have dental problems, and I use sesame oil.
Okay.
There was a big advertising campaign in London a couple of years ago trying to get everyone to use coconut oil. You can use olive oil, but I think sesame oil is the best because olive oil has too strong a taste.
It does.
Yeah.
Whereas sesame oil is delicious. Yeah, sesame oil is delicious.
But not toasted sesame oil, not the kind you use in cooking in the Chinese food. Right. I asked my dental hygienist when I went in to have my teeth cleaned. I asked her what she thought of it, and she said it's wonderful. And I asked her scientifically, why would it work? And she said that when you brush your teeth or you rinse your mouth, you clean the outside of the teeth and gums. And most problems that people have with their teeth are actually with their gums. Um, so you're cleaning the outside of the gums, but every cell in your body has like a membrane around it that's oil based. So when you do oil pulling, it actually can get into the cells and pull out the toxins from the cells. So I know friends who have had like abscessed teeth where they can't get to the dentist and they do oil pulling and the abscess goes away in a few days. But make sure it's untoasted. And tongue cleaning is another very simple thing people can do. You know,
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. I do that every day. Yeah,
mhm,
it's great. We have so much bacteria on our tongue.
uh-huh, yeah. So actually, I do tongue cleaning and then I do the oil pulling. And
Afterwards.
yeah, and then I do the tongue cleaning again to get the oil off.
Fun things to do and easy to do, really easy to do, inexpensive to do, and healthy for the system.
Uh-huh, right. Yeah, and actually Kapalabhati that people think is a pranayama is actually a kriya. It's actually designed for cleansing the body. So I talk about that as well, and there are variations you can do on the Kapalabhati as well. You know, so there are a lot of different kriyas that people can do to help cleanse the body.
Especially important now, right? With international travel picking up and there's COVID spikes and, there's no more masking on planes and all of these things. So anything that we can do to keep our immune system healthy and strong, right? That's a way of great preventative care.
Yeah. And also, you wanted to talk about the hospice that I work with.
Yeah,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that because that's incredible. That's in northern India, right? The Ganga Prem Hospice.
Yeah, it's in Rishikesh. And because I think since we are taking yoga from India, I think a lot of people have the feeling they should give something back, right? Um, so I started working with this hospice. The founder is a woman named Nanima, who's actually, she was English, but she went to India about 50 years ago and never came back, right? And she's a real, she's a real sadhu. She lived in the mountains for a long time and she spent a lot of time meditating. And then she felt that she really had to sort of do some work in the world. So she started this hospice in India, in Rishikesh. Um, and a hospice is a place where people go to die, basically. So she wanted to make a spiritual environment where people could come to die. And it's a concept that's not really well understood in India. When we were trying to get like planning permission to build the hospice, we bought the land and then we had to get permission to build a hospice there. And they kept turning us down and saying, no, you can't build a hospital there. And we kept saying, no, it's not a hospital, it's a hospice. And we'd explain it to them and they kept saying, no, you can't build a hospital there. So finally, we changed the proposal and we said, we want to build an ashram for people who are dying of cancer.
So once you change the name or the description and the terminology from hospital to a center of some sort, it went through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we built this hospice there and it's been functioning now for maybe 5 or 6 years. And we built it in like modules. So now we're getting ready to start building the second module.
I think, huge believers in hospice. Of course, we've had family members who have gone through hospice, and to add a spiritual component to it is so powerful. So it's really just a great example of how you can bring, that spiritual help and healing at the end of people's lives. So I think more hospice centers could learn from this, right? Can learn from what you're doing in India and maybe replicate it in other parts of the world. Wow, thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's just incredible between your books and your teaching and your courses and the hospice work. We're just so grateful to have had this time with you today and for you to share with others who are listening about yoga and meditation and the kriyas, right? And the cleansing. So we will be posting your books on the subsequent pages, right? Right after the end of this interview with a link to where people can find out more about your work and more about your courses and more about your books. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.